Google fired me and other vocal employee organizers, and they've gotten away with it for 2 years. Google's motto is, or at least used to be, "Don't be evil." But very shortly after I arrived there, I found out that they had been secretly working on a project to analyze drone footage for the US military called Project Maven. There were concerns that in some way that this work that people were doing to improve computer vision through the contract would lead to violence and death. To me, that didn't fit with those values.
I originally started working at Google quite a long time ago, and while I don't think things were ever perfect, I think there was kind of a genuine commitment to live up to don't be evil as much as possible. There was a lot of open discussion about anything that might take place, but in the last few years, things really changed, trying to kind of take a neutral stance on so-called political issues around women, around minorities, around the LGBTQ community, including things like harassment on YouTube and reparative therapy apps in the App Store. There were also a lot of issues with harassment and retaliation when Andy Rubin was given $90 million to leave as part of being the perpetrator of sexual harassment. The company was trying more to bury these things than to do anything about them.
In early summer 2019, Customs and Border Protection, CBP, put out a request for information proposal looking for a company that could help them manage their cloud infrastructure. In that proposal, they listed their existing infrastructure, which included Google Cloud. For me personally, seeing the treatment that immigrants and refugees were getting by Border Patrol and by ICE, it was just completely inhumane and not something I felt like I could be any part of, even indirectly. I and several other workers banded together to ask Google to commit not to working with them in the future. We thought surely once they're aware of this, they wouldn't want to be associated with that kind of treatment of people. We released a petition and got over 1,000 signatures, but Google continued to insist that they would simply not work with the bad parts of CBP, as though they could be cleanly separated. Google management had been growing increasingly unhappy with worker-led petitions and actions, and with this CBP petition, they really started to crack down.
I had been looking at the calendars because a number of us were being censored trying to discuss some important issues. And the first thing that I saw when I looked at one of the calendars of one of the people who was doing the censorship directly was calendar entries with the names of people who I recognized as other people who'd been involved in organizing. It seemed like they were quite literally being checked up on. I started to wonder, how is this being coordinated? And we uncovered that they were hiring union-busting firms. The firm that they hired, IRI Consultants, has worked to help crush all sorts of union campaigns. They're infamous for helping large hospital systems defeat nurse unionization campaigns.
When a small amount of information made its way to Business Insider about Google's existing CBP projects, they interrogated myself as well as several other of the petition co-authors. None of us, of course, had leaked the information, but they were very clearly trying to intimidate us and discourage us from writing anything further, or taking any further actions. They decided that what we were doing wasn't okay after all and fired us within, I believe, 15 minutes of each other.
Google fired me because I was standing up for myself and my coworkers. Google said they fired me because I accessed documents and calendars.
According to Google, I and several others were fired for violations of their data security policy, code of conduct, and several other written policies for supposedly leaking information publicly. None of us had shared anything publicly, and what we shared within Google was only information that was accessible to any employee who could use a search engine. And at Google, that's rather a lot of them. It was clear to all of us that the real reason was to punish us for activism and discourage any future attempts at employee organizing.
Yes at Google was originally a mailing list run by workers for discussing workplace issues. When HR took it over, it stopped to be an effective tool for organizing. They pushed a Chrome extension to all of Google that would give you a little reminder if you tried to schedule a meeting with more than 100 people. This was very clearly in response to the organizing meetings that were taking place. It doesn't have to do anything other than make you feel watched by management to have an impact on your organizing. I added a change that popped up when you visited the internal community guidelines page or the IRI consultant's webpage, reminding you of your right to participate in protected concerted activity. A few weeks later, I was fired. Google claims they fired me for violating security policy. It doesn't matter what they actually say here. I didn't violate any security policy. The reason they fired me is plain and simply organizing.
I think it's very important for the NLRB to show that employees' rights to organize and to discuss their employment extends not just to obvious working conditions like sick days, but also to workers' rights to know what they're working on and not be forced to work on projects that are, a huge ethical violation.
Immigration rights are a workplace issue. Climate change is a workplace issue. We all have an ability to affect that as workers.
We're going to push our case forward, and we're going to show them that just because they have, a big old-fashioned law firm with half a dozen lawyers and who knows how many other staff behind it that they're probably spending tens of thousands of dollars per day on, that a bunch of scrappy workers who have some principles can still not just fight in that space, but win.